I think we're at a very interesting crossroads because it's you can't imagine a president of the United States. Let's be bipartisan for a moment. Let's agree on one thing. There is no scenario where the president of the United States can't head up a press conference. Under any scenario, every president has been able to address the press, and in the good times and the bad times. She has to start talking to the press, period. There's no optionality. There's no scenario where anybody would be comfortable, particularly in the swing states with swing voters. Are thinking to myself, what do we got here? Why won't she talk to the press? I'm asking it from a policy guy. I need explanations for these policies because I have to invest on these policies. I have questions, and I don't get any answers. I'm not being unreasonable. Come out wherever you are and talk to the press.
I want my former or future commander-in-chief to have the confidence of someone that is ready to take on every other global leader. So I would hope that the current vice president will come out and say, yeah, what questions do you have for me?
When this is all over, a masterclass can be taught on the biggest city girl finesse ever. No presidential candidate ever avoided media like this and refused to answer questions for 6 weeks. Not only as a sitting VP who said to have been the last person in the room with Joe Biden on all major decisions, but a presidential candidate that's asking for votes. 6 weeks. She even snubbed the black reporters, didn't even show up to their event, and had a whole month later to invite them to her own event where she could have had a press conference and sat down one-on-one with several of them over a few days. You know, out of 1,000 black journalists, I'm sure there's 10 capable, right? If you can't talk to the American media and answer questions, how would you conduct yourself on the international stage? Well, good thing she's already in office and we don't have to imagine it.
And I'm wondering what the United States is going to do more specifically to set up a permanent infrastructure. And relatedly, is the United States willing to make a specific allocation for Ukrainian refugees?
Okay. A friend in need is a friend indeed.
Okay, I can first. Okay, so this time.
Wow. This is her in office as VP, doing a joint press conference with the president of Poland. She couldn't even answer a simple question about Ukraine's conflict with Russia. So instead of answering the question, she starts laughing like a lunatic hyena on the world stage in front of international leaders. That's the president of another country she's standing next to. I know this is cute for her sorority members and her fellow city girls, but everyone else with a clear view, can you imagine what's going through the minds of the leaders of these other nations, African nations, China, Russia? This woman is not as competent as they want us to believe, and that's why she can't answer any questions about her own plan for the country.
9 days, she's been out. She's not done a single interview. Tomorrow, the National Association of Black Journalists issued an invitation to Donald Trump and to Kamala Harris. National Association of Black Journalists. And Donald Trump is the one who is showing up. Kamala Harris is not. How long is the on the teleprompter, totally protected campaign going to last?
News Nation was one of the first to have this conversation. That was 9 days in. Well, look now. It's been 40. And like I've been saying over and over, this is how I know they know she's not a black woman. A black woman wouldn't be able to get away with this. She would have had to come out right away and have interviews all over the place. She wouldn't be able to, one, hide from media while also getting the level of worship and protection by that same media. Nah, they would have torn her to shreds already and criticized her harshly for this tactic. First of all, for a black woman to be in this position, she would have had to be 3 times smarter than Kamala. Yeah, she would have to be competent, a great communicator, and have 10 times more knowledge than Kamala. That's how I know that they all know the truth.
We'll get to that question, but I do first want to state my impression of the Vice President's incredible speech tonight. She had thousands and thousands of people in the crowd. It leads off of a week that she had where she raised $200 million from donors. It was a historic amount of support that she's received.
All stipulated, Counselor.
2/3 of those donations were first-time donors, people who are excited. She's galvanized the
Fundraising
crowd.
segments next. Answer the question.
And also, I want to also note that she laid out a vision of the future. She talked about wanting to move forward and not backwards. She talked about opportunity. She talked about the middle class. She talked about reproductive rights and
we heard the whole thing. Now, when is she going? When is this candidate who talked about the importance of democracy? The importance of democracy is the importance of a press and speaking to the free press. She hasn't done that in 9 days. She's turned down every interview request. She's even turned down the Association of Black Journalists. If this was Donald Trump, and I remember when Donald Trump didn't speak to the press for 3 days, the republic was over, and it was an assault on the media. 9 days she's gotten away with it.
And for the last 40 days, this woman right here is a perfect summary of what's been going on. A lot of people caping for Kamala, bringing up this manufactured support, a whole bunch of fluff, no substance. Even right now at the time of this video, no policies, no agenda on her website, just donate buttons.
So I'd like to also say that Vice President Harris has engaged media throughout the entire time that she's worked as vice president, and she's been hitting the
You're entitled to your own opinion. You're not entitled to your own facts. Hogan answered the question. Give me an answer.
I will get to your question about NABJ. First, I don't work for the vice president anymore, but I did see in public reporting that this was a clear scheduling conflict.
No, that's not true. You know, a few people try to come in here and run interference and try to say she had to go to a funeral. The NABJ was that Wednesday. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee's funeral was that Thursday. So yeah, what's the next slide? There was no conflict. Especially when you have over 1,000 black reporters waiting on you, and they told you they had your opponent in the room too. See, what really happened is Kamala left them waiting and refused to respond, didn't even want to engage. That's until she found out that Trump accepted the invitation. And like I've said plenty of times here, what stopped her from scheduling with them on her own time? It's no excuse.
She always gave a place at the table to black journalists.
Okay, this is a woman, though, who, when off script, is a disaster. She was a disaster in the Lester Holt interview.
I disagree.
Okay, well, you can disagree, but there's a reason that she doesn't go out there and do interviews. I covered the Trump-Pence White House. Trump and Pence talked all the time to the media.
I staffed her for hundreds of interviews.
Okay, well, how many network interviews?
Many, dozens, and I'm happy to follow up with numbers. The vice president has always prioritized media. She's prioritized a free press. She's talked about
in 9 days, she took one gaggle question.
The vice president has been talking to thousands and thousands of voters over the last week. It has been a historic performance for any presidential candidate in history.
This is very smart by the Democrats, what they're doing. You must keep her in a bubble. You must keep her on script. Once she deviates, it is a cavalcade of gaffes and of word salad that no one understands, and an unpopular, radical, dangerous positions that no one likes.
So, Amisha, have they let this go on a little too long? Because it's now become this situation where the story is about whether she's going to do an interview. I mean, I realize that there are countervailing strategies often in terms of when you sit a candidate down with the news media. Sometimes it can be counterproductive ahead of a convention, for example. But on the other hand, if you let it go on too long, it can get out of your control.
I think you're right. And that's also why her campaign has said that it's going to happen before the end of next month. And I think that that's very important. Be mindful. The DNC just ended last week. She just became the official nominee on Friday.
Ma'am, stop it. Joe Biden dropped out 40 days ago. Remember 40,000 black women got on a call and raised $1 million for her right away? The next day, 50,000 black men got on a call. Then the next day, white women broke Zoom. 164,000 of them jumped on a phone call and raised $8.5 million in hours. Remember that? See how quick they all jumped on Zoom to give their own interviews and speeches endorsing Kamala? Well, why Kamala couldn't do that? She should have had her first interview that week. Why did it take 6 weeks to agree to an interview?
On top of that, we also saw that, with the roll call, which was just a few days prior, the virtual roll call, that vote came through. This is something where we've had Kamala Harris atop the ticket officially for just a few days. So this is a very historic campaign, a very truncated campaign, but the pressure for her was to actually get out and talk to the voters. She's been doing that. She had to build that capacity. She also just chose her vice president as a running mate.
Hang on.
The press was not her top priority.
We're talking about the vice president of the United States. She's been preparing to be president allegedly for 3.5 years.
She's also been doing a lot of interviews as vice president.
So therefore she should have been able to do an interview on the first day. Why isn't she not?
It's not a question of ability. It is one of campaign measuring.
No, it's one. She doesn't want to answer
how much she needs to
She
be
doesn't
out
want to
and visiting
answer for the fact that she was against fracking. She was against private insurance.
In ways
she was
that
against
Joe Biden
gasoline
could not.
cars.
And
she doesn't want to talk
where
about
they are
it.
and having those conversations every day. She's
doesn't-
talking about it to the
she
people who
doesn't
actually
want to
cast
talk
votes
about
in
what
November.
Yeah, she's talking to the people about 304 rights.
Push pause, because Mark, I will say that this has been something that people behind the scenes will acknowledge is something that is not her top strength. These unscripted moments where she's under pressure from interviewers. If it was her strongest move, they would have played it already.
They would have played it, no question. Look, I hate to play the middle here, but they're both right. I mean, Misha and Brad, you're both right in the sense that right now they don't have to do the interview. There isn't enough public pressure for them to do it.
That's because the media's been caping for her.
And the question arises.
I think the public pressure is building up for the interview.
I know, but I think it is. But remember, this is the first week back to school for a lot of schools, certainly in the Northeast. Kids are just back in the South right now. I bet people are finishing their vacations. She is able to enjoy the cover of summer right now.
Back to school? Now the excuse is kids going back to school? That's got nothing to do with Kamala. She's 60 years old. She don't have no kids going back to school. But even if she did, kids going back to school is still not an excuse for a presidential candidate to not take interviews for 40 days. Barack Obama had 2 kids going back to school in 2008. And he did interviews on every local and national platform. Same as Trump. Trump had little Trump going back to school in 2016. And he was everywhere too. But Kamala Harris is finally going to do an interview. This is after she had this whole internal debate about when she would do the interview, who she would do it with. Biden's team had to tell her what to do. Obama's team had to tell her what to do. Her sister's team had to tell her what to do. And after all these people had to tell her what to do, she was finally able to make the most tough decision of her career. Kamala is doing a pre-recorded sit-down interview with CNN. She's bringing her support puppy with her, her VP pick. He'll be doing the interview with her because she doesn't know how to answer questions alone. But let's go ahead and get the conversation started. Never in history have we seen anything like this. 40 days for a presidential candidate to speak to the media while the media covered them and gave them non-stop praise and fluff at the same time. Why is Kamala the cosplaying chameleon getting special treatment? Somebody answer that for me in the comments. Don't forget that you can support this channel as well. Links to Cash App and PayPal are below. Ladies, fellas, want a balanced analysis, want the truth from a woman's perspective? Then you're going to want to subscribe to this channel and don't forget to like and share.